In 331 BCE, a decisive clash unfolded on the plains of Gaugamela that would reshape the ancient world. Alexander the Great, the young king of Macedon, faced the mighty Persian king Darius III in a battle that would determine the fate of an empire. This is the story of how a daring general and his brilliant tactics led to the collapse of one of the largest empires in history and solidified Alexander's legacy as one of the greatest military minds the world has ever seen. The Battle of Gaugamela was part of the larger campaign by Alexander the Great to conquer the Persian Empire, a campaign that had already seen him victorious at the battles of Granicus and Issus. By 331 BCE, Alexander had marched through Asia Minor and into the heart of Persia, determined to bring down Darius III, the Persian king, and claim the vast territories of the Persian Empire for himself. Alexander's ambition was fueled not only by a desire to expand his empire, but also by a deeply ingrained belief that he was destined for greatness. Darius, in contrast, sought to defend his empire against the Macedonian invasion and to maintain control over his vast dominion. The cause of the battle. Darius III knew that Alexander posed a significant threat to his empire, especially after the defeat at Issus. Determined to stop the Macedonian advance, he gathered an enormous army, with estimates ranging between 50,000 to 100,000 Persian troops, though some ancient sources exaggerated these numbers. The Persian army consisted of infantry, cavalry, war elephants, and even side chariots. Alexander, despite having a much smaller force of around 40,000 men, was confident in his tactical superiority. He marched eastward and met Darius on the plains of Gaugamela, in what is modern-day northern Iraq. The location was carefully chosen by Darius because of its flat terrain, ideal for his chariots and large cavalry force. The warlords and leaders. This battle brought two remarkable figures face to face. Alexander the Great, king of Macedon. Alexander was just 25 years old at the time of the Battle of Gaugamela. He was a brilliant strategist and fearless leader who led his troops from the front. Alexander's daring and charisma had already earned him the loyalty of his men and a reputation as an undefeated conqueror. Darius III of Persia. Darius was the ruler of the vast Persian Empire, stretching from Egypt to India. Although he had the advantage of numbers and resources, Darius faced criticism for his cautious nature and lack of battlefield prowess. This battle represented his last great chance to defeat Alexander and save his empire. Alexander's leadership and aggressive tactics were in stark contrast to Darius's more conservative approach, which would ultimately be a deciding factor in the outcome of the battle. The Battle of Gaugamela began on October 1, 331 BCE, and it quickly turned into one of history's most tactically fascinating engagements. Darius positioned his forces across the plains, utilizing the wide-open space to maximize his advantage in numbers. Alexander, knowing that a frontal assault would be disastrous, employed a brilliant tactic. He feigned a retreat on the right flank, drawing the Persian cavalry away from the center. As the Persian cavalry pursued the retreating Macedonians, Alexander led a wedge of elite companion cavalry and infantry straight into the gap that had opened in the Persian lines, aiming directly for Darius. In the confusion, Darius III panicked and fled the battlefield, much like he had done at Issus 2 years earlier. His flight caused the Persian army to collapse into disarray, and the Macedonians were able to exploit the chaos to secure a decisive victory. The end of the battle. The battle ended with a crushing defeat for the Persians. Darius's army was shattered, and the once great Persian Empire was now vulnerable to complete conquest. While Darius fled eastward in an attempt to raise another army, his empire was already slipping from his grasp. With the victory at Gaugamela, Alexander marched unopposed into Babylon, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. It was the beginning of the end for the Persian Empire, and Alexander was now in control of the vast territories once ruled by Darius. The Battle of Gaugamela ended with Alexander's victory because of his tactical brilliance, superior leadership, and the cohesion of his army. By exploiting Darius's weaknesses, his tendency to flee under pressure, and his reliance on overwhelming numbers rather than innovative strategy, Alexander was able to outmaneuver the larger Persian force. Darius's failure to command effectively in battle ultimately sealed the fate of his empire. After Gaugamela, the Persian resistance was fractured and demoralized, and within a few years, Darius himself would be betrayed and killed by one of his own satraps. Alexander, on the other hand, would continue to expand his empire, becoming the ruler of the known world. Legacy and influence. The Battle of Gaugamela was more than just a victory. It was the event that marked the fall of the Persian Empire and the rise of the Macedonian Empire. Alexander's conquest of Persia solidified his place in history as one of the greatest military leaders of all time, and his empire stretched from Greece to Egypt and into India. Though Alexander's empire would fragment after his death, his influence on the ancient world was profound. His legacy continues to inspire generations of military strategists, historians, and leaders. For those interested in diving deeper into the Battle of Gaugamela and Alexander the Great's conquests, there are a number of sources available. Arrian's Anabasis of Alexander, a detailed ancient account of Alexander's campaigns written by a Roman historian. Plutarch's Parallel Lives, The Life of Alexander, a classical biography of Alexander focusing on his character and achievements. Alexander the Great by Philip Freeman, a modern, accessible biography of Alexander that covers his campaigns in detail. The Battle of Gaugamela was a turning point in history, a moment when a young king's ambition and tactical brilliance forever changed the ancient world. Join us next time as we explore another epic conflict in history, right here on History Orlog.